Hello, Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for a few seconds while everybody's connections to click in. So while we do that, I thought I'd mention, make sure to come to our meeting next month. Jean Nickel will be our guest on March 22nd. So look for that. And okay, I think that everybody should be connected to us now, so I'm going to go ahead. First, I want to say, please type your questions into the chat and we'll ask them of Dr. Steele when we get to that portion of the evening. Okay, for a solid year after the 2020 presidential elections, I didn't go for more than a week without hearing a fellow Chatham County Democrat say, we need to do in North Carolina what they did in Georgia. Groups such as the New Georgia Project and Fair Fight were credited with registering over 1 million people of color to vote in Georgia. Luckily, there are people in our state like Dr. Aimy Steele, founder and executive director of the New North Carolina Project. Dr. Steele lives in Concord with her husband, Michael, and their 5 children. She has a PhD and more than 2 decades of experience in the field of education. And she ran for North Carolina House District 82, both in 2018 and 2020. Dr. Steele is behind the New North Carolina Project, an effort to increase the electorate and turnout in traditionally Black and Brown communities. The New North Carolina Project's mission is to make politics represent the needs of North Carolinians by investing in communities of color and expanding the engaged electorate. Once again, please remember to type your questions into the chat and we'll ask them later. Welcome, Dr. Steele.
Thank you so much. And I hope you all are having a great evening. It is 7 o'clock on a Tuesday in North Carolina. And I believe today was like our first day of spring, but I can't be for certain because it's North Carolina. It felt so good outside and hopefully you were able to enjoy some of this weather. But I just want to say thank you for joining us tonight. This is such an incredible moment in time, and it really is something that we should embrace, especially knowing what we know and experiencing what we've experienced since 2020. So just a little bit of background before I jump into my 80 slide presentation. Just kidding. But just a little background. I am Aimy Steele, as I can't remember if it was Vicki or Sherry who introduced me, but I hail from Concord, North Carolina. And I ran for office to really fix public education in North Carolina. That was my mission, that was my purpose, and that was my goal. And what I learned was that, districts are drawn in such a way that favor one candidate over another. Had I known that, I probably wouldn't have run for office, but I didn't know that I was in what's called an R11 district, which means that Republicans were favored to win it by 11 points. I was just running to make a difference, being a good teacher and all. And I was a former Spanish teacher, school principal at the time when I decided to run for office. And I literally was just trying to fix this class size legislation that had my teachers up in arms and really provided negative impact to our students. That's all I was trying to do. Well, got into the campaign and realized very soon that because of the odds of losing the election, my race was not a targeted race. And that hurt my feelings, y'all. It really, really did. And it hurt my feelings to the point where I didn't really understand how to rebound from that and how to come from that. So what I decided to do was listen to people who were younger than me, because that's what you should do when you don't know what to do. And the people who were younger than me said, you need to get out and knock on doors. You need to talk to people. You need to have direct voter contact, because clearly you are not seen as a winnable race. So the only way you're going to become a winnable race is to change the electorate. If this is who they expect to show up, then add to that this many, and then maybe we'll see some good traction. That's exactly what we did. We started a field game, an aggressive field game from July 4th. I will never forget that day. It was so hot. It was a Saturday, July 4th, 2018, up until November. But something magical happened around late September. Around late September, because of our early field efforts, and it wasn't really that long, July to or mid to late September, we started polling within the margin of error. And if you know anything about politics, the margin of error is plus or minus 3 points. So we were expected to lose by 11 points, but we were plus or minus 3 points by late September, early October. That really prompted the party to say, hey, we should pay attention to this race. But by then it was too late. I was expected to lose by 10,000 votes. I lost by 1,978 votes. Field made all the difference. Fast forward to 2020. I spent 2019 sobbing, crying, picking myself up, strategizing, and hiring a finance director so we could raise money faster or sooner rather than waiting until the campaign. Well, then we brought in a finance director, started raising money. I got hit with a primary. My current opponent at the time retired. And then there was a Republican primary and a Democratic primary. It was just too much. But we were able, thankfully, to knock 3,000 doors from January in the cold up until March, the primary. The goal, I won by 82%. The goal was to take a 2-week break and then go gangbusters with the plan, the field plan. Because before we started in July. So this time we would have had January to March, 2 weeks off, and then March to November. So we would have had months and months and months. And the goal was to get 100,000 doors, calls, and texts. Whereas in 2018, we had 66,000 doors, knocks, and texts. Do you know this funny thing happened? The whole country and the world actually shut down. And because we didn't have that aggressive field strategy, many candidates, 17 Black women to be specific, and many other candidates in my circle lost. White women, white men, Black women, Black men, we just lost. It was terrible. It was a terrible day, terrible in 2020. And what I learned from that after multiple debriefing meetings where, you know, people endorse you when you're running for office, when you lose, they want to know why you lost and what could they have done differently and what could you have done differently. And the one thing I kept saying in all 16 meetings I had to have in the month of November before Thanksgiving was we lost because we didn't stand up our standard field game. We didn't do what we always did or what we had done in the past, which is knock doors, make phone calls as a balance out to the doors, and send texts to balance out the doors. You have to be on doors, period. End of story. There's no, like, you can't spend your way out of getting on doors. You just can't. So that was the biggest aha. So in November, after those meetings, I decided to meet with some of the leaders of these grassroots groups in December, just to form some common information, just to be able to share it with the party. When I met with those leaders, they were inspired, they were motivated, they were full of hope and full of ideas about how we could do this work. And that's where the party started to get more interesting. Around January, we had the Warnock-Ossoff victory in Georgia. We had the victory for a few hours before we had to turn all of our attention to the insurrection the next day. And in my county, we had COVID-19 vaccinations for the first day on that same day, January 6th. So I was volunteering when I learned about the insurrection. And it's almost like something in my spirit knew it was time to do something and I had better get busy. But I didn't know doing what. I didn't know what I should do. But I was so incredibly inspired by Stacey Abrams, by her tenacity, her focus, her drive, her energy, and her willingness to do something with the ashes of defeat. And that's what I called my 2 elections, ashes of defeat. Taking those ashes and making something out of it is what I decided to do. And there were many people who joined me along the way. 77 meetings later, the New North Carolina Project was formed. And that is what I will present to you this evening. Now, your speakers told me I had 3 hours, and I tried to tell them I didn't need that much time, but they insisted. So I'm going to go real slow. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Okay, so the New North Carolina Project. This message is a message of hope and a message of action. If you don't have hope or you are losing your hope, you need to get it back. You need to get it back right now as fast as possible. And if you don't know how to get it back, ask a friend, phone a friend, because hope is all we have. And doing that or taking that action of hope, getting your hope back will inspire you to take action. because there are little people waiting on us to help make lives better for their mommies and their daddies and their grandmas and their guardians. We have to show up and do this work. You do not have the privilege of sitting home and sitting this one out. I'll let someone else get it. We don't have that privilege, okay? So don't act like that. All right, happy Black History Month. I must give honor to the folks who have paved the way, my ancestors, all people of color, but particularly Black people this month, who have paved the way for many, many people, many cultures and many races in this country. So happy Black History Month. Now, I want to share with you just some pictures. This is a collage of just amazingness, because this is our most recent outreach just a few days ago on Saturday. This outreach touched one of the poorest county, actually statistically the poorest county, the lowest vaccinated rated county in North Carolina, and the highest rate of COVID-19 or COVID infections in our state. This particular county, Robeson County, is where we were this past Saturday. It was so amazing to be out in the community again, to be doing community outreach, and really to be taking a message of hope and massive action to the community. We were given 1,000 pairs of chino pants, which cost $98 a piece, that we were able to then turn around and give to Native communities and Black and Brown communities in Robeson County, along with masks that were donated by a manufacturer in Robeson County, along with hand sanitizer, gloves, and disinfectant wipes, a hot meal made by a Lumbee Lumbee Native American chef, as well as a tasty treat that is common in the Lumbee Native American culture. So we were just so blessed to be with all of these people, these wonderful people in Robeson County this past weekend. But this is what action in New North Carolina Project looks like. So Stacey Abrams said it best when she said, "Too big is not a reason to not try." We know this work is big. We got the memo, I promise. But we're still going to try, and we invite you to try with us. If you want to critique it, keep it zipped, right? We don't have time. I don't have time. We don't listen to the negativity. We try to solve problems as quickly as possible and move forward. But too big is not a reason to not try. Again, when we instill or establish hope, that feeling of expectation and a desire for something to happen, like a certain thing to happen, we know that that hope will continue to keep us in action. And that's the process of doing something to achieve some aim, some goal, some, desire. Our goal is to keep hope alive. That's not just a cliche, and have massive action or take massive action. So what's the mission of the New North Carolina Project? Isn't it like everything else in North Carolina? Isn't it like every other organization? Actually, no. We're making politics represent the needs of North Carolinians by explicitly investing in communities of color. And those communities of color are Asian American, Pacific Islander, Black, Latinx, and Native Indigenous populations. We are here to expand the engaged electorate. That's making sure we grow the people who are already registered to vote and semi-engaged in this work, and then creating voters forever. We want people to know, and hopefully PSA, all of you know, there are 2 elections in North Carolina every year. We can't take a year off. We don't have a year off. There's not a year on, a year off. There's year 1, which is this. There's year 2, which is this. Year 3, which is this. Year 4 is a presidential, and then it repeats. We have an election every year. We have 2. So we can't take the same approach of you vote every 4 years, vote every 2 years. You got to vote forever. Every election, every time. Our vision is to create a more equitable North Carolina, and we do that by standing up or erecting a year-round field outreach program that involves community organizing, relational organizing, and direct voter contact through our work in communities. So who are we? Well, you know who I am. I am the founder and the executive director of the C4. And then Yakima Reinhardt is our executive director of our C3. So we have New North Carolina Project, which is the C4, and the New North Carolina Project Foundation, which is the C3. And then we have some amazing staff members, one of whom is on this call tonight. So that is our Deputy Executive Director, Bree Hendrick, and she works for both organizations. Kay Brown is our State Organizing Director. Shonda Herms is our Development Director. Her job is to raise the money, hence the green shirt or jacket. Kristen Havlick is our Digital Director and Executive Assistant. And then we have 7 amazing regional organizers who are already on the ground making good trouble or getting into good trouble through their canvassing operations, their community outreach, their door knocking, or I already said that, that's called canvassing. When I was the first candidate, I have to share this. When I was first a candidate, people kept saying, we're going to canvas, we're going to canvas. And I was like, what is that? I don't even understand that. We're not painting. Like, what is that? Canvassing is door knocking. Did not know that for a while. But these these regional organizers are canvassing. They are phone banking, they're text banking, they're organizing community events, they're attending community meetings, council meetings, commissioner meetings, school board meetings, and they're getting volunteers in your areas all across the state to really do this work with us. And we're looking for paid staff who want to also do this work, but be paid for it as paid canvassers. So we have Trey in the Wake and Halifax area, Taylor in the Iredell, Mecklenburg County areas, Austin, Cumberland and Lee counties, Celeste, Forsyth, Guilford, Rockingham counties, Zach is in New Hanover, Pender and Onslow counties, Maria Jose, también es Borda, I love saying her whole name because I'm a former Spanish teacher, is Mecklenburg, Union, Gaston, and Cabarrus. And then Sugarly Malinch is in Durham, Orange, and Alamance counties. So these are our boots on the ground, like right now, all over the state. We do encourage you to take a picture of this QR code if you are interested in volunteering. Bree will drop the link to our Mobilize if you'd like to sign up to take part in some shifts. Now, don't sign up if you don't plan to come to your shift, because we will call you and we will shame you. No, I'm just kidding. We will call you though, because if you say you want to do this work, we trust that when you sign up, you're going to appear. So please volunteer if you plan to keep your commitment. We'd love to have you. This is what our Mobilize link looks like. If you're interested in signing up to door knock or to do anything else with our Mobilize, we have phone banking, text banking, postcard banking, and door knocking. So why are we doing this work? As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we need to engage communities of color. In case you didn't know, there were 1 million plus eligible and or registered voters of color who did not show up in 2020. Let me put that on repeat. More than 1 million eligible to register to vote but didn't, and or registered voters just simply did not vote in 2020. That is not acceptable, y'all. Chief Justice Sherry Beasley lost her race by 401 votes. If only 1% of the 1 million actually showed up, she would have won, right? This is the problem that we're trying to fix. We're engaging communities of color, building year-round community organizing, building a voter base for years to come, and creating a pipeline so that we can see some other leaders who look like the people who live here in the body of leadership for our state. And we are demonstrably building a sense of trust in the communities. You can't just go into a community of color and say, listen, I know what you need. I'd like for you to vote this way so that you can vote in your interest and not against your interest. And oh, by the way, I'll see you in 4 years and I'm going to ask you for the same thing without any evidence of having fixed the first set of problems I told you I'd fix when I asked you to vote for me the first time. Communities of color see that writing on the wall, and they are not inspired to vote regularly with those types of promises, empty promises. We have to do better. So our goal as an organization is to continue to build trust in communities of color so that then we can ask them, hey, you need to register to vote. This is how we take care of the issue that is important to you and turn it around to demonstrate your power in the ballot box. That's our role as the New North Carolina Project. So what we plan to do, I've already covered this: canvassing, phone banking, text banking. That's like the standard 3. And then relational organizing, as well as strategic partnerships with groups that are already on the ground. We make no qualms about it. We love partnering with groups. We partner with the New Rural Project, Poder NC Agents Together, You Can Vote, A. Philip Randolph, all of them, because partnership and collaboration is where it's at. If we can't collaborate and be vulnerable with what we're doing with other groups, we are really going to shoot ourselves in the foot when it comes to every election, subsequent election, after, from here forward. We have to work together. As a former teacher, I remember being in a hallway or in a PLC, we call them professional learning communities, and sharing all of our lesson plans, all of the strategies, ways we keep up with students' achievement, how we measure their success, how we intervene. We share everything. And then you pick and choose what works for you as a teacher, but we share everything. And in this organizing space, I didn't really know people don't share. So it's been a little bit of a growth journey to really understand organizing culture in North Carolina. But I will say there are some groups out there who are amazing, who share, who talk, who are collaborative, and who want to work together for a better North Carolina. And that's what we want to be. So what are some of the issues we talk about on the doors? Well, when we go to doors, we talk about issues. We talk about what's important to the people we're talking to. We don't go to the community and say, this is what you should care about, and this is why I'm here. That is self-serving and not a way to build trust in a community of color. That's a way to get cursed out and turned away. What actually works is to ask people what is concerning to them. What issue matters to them? What resonates for them? Is it COVID? Is it healthcare? Is it money? Is it economic empowerment? Is it homelessness? Or, just being strapped in your home? The home costs too much, right? Is it just general relations? There are a lot of people struggling with this, idea of just such racial turmoil and tension. That is troubling to people. And people need to talk it out. And sometimes they want to, have a conversation about that on the doors. So we stay on the doors a little bit longer than your average traditional campaign canvassing time frame, which might be 2 to 3, 4 minutes max. We're staying on doors 10, sometimes 15 minutes. And that really matters to people. Education may be a topic they're interested in. Either way, we do our best to really understand what's going on in the community and then design programming around that if we need to, or partner with other groups who already have programming that we can work with in collaboration. So where we plan to work? Well, the only map in the whole wide world for North Carolina that makes sense to me are not the current congressional maps. They make zero sense, but they are the Department of Public Instruction's maps, because to me, it just coordinates the entire state appropriately. And this is the map we used. So where we plan to work are in the areas that are blue. So the primary areas, right? We have 29 rural counties plus 7 major urban centers that provide the data for where New North Carolina projects should work, because these are areas where we will find the highest opportunity voters, or the highest opportunity to see or find voters of color or potential voters of color. So the first one was by precinct. This one is just a heat map of humans, so just people. And this map shows where Black, Latinx, AAPI, and Indigenous voters in 2020 were non-voters. So they were a percentage of the population percentage of the total eligible voting population from 0 to 30%. So the darker the blue, the higher the opportunity is that we're going to find someone of color in that area. So this is how we identify where we're going to go, because we only work in communities of color predominantly. Okay. And then we overlay that with census tracts just to confirm our data are correct. And data are a plural word. It sounds fine to say data is, but data are. I see Vicky celebrating. Thank you, my dear. Okay. But the census tract also provides us with information around where Black and Brown people live. So triangulating all of that data really helps us understand where we should focus and where we should knock and where we should go. Sometimes when we go to communities on census tracts, we knock all the doors in that community. So we're going to find Republicans, Democrats, independents, Black, white, Latinx, Native, Chinese, all sorts of people. And that's okay, because we're knocking on the census tract door as opposed to in a specific community of color. But the goal is to go where there are heavier populations of people of color. So out of 100 doors, we might find 90 that are people of color and 10 that are not. Okay. So what's next for us? Well, it is game on, y'all. Listen, join us or get out of the way. That's all I got to say. Aggressive field organizing is what we do. And it is stressful. Aggressive. It is all of the things, right? All the feels. But that's what we have to do, because we know what is at stake. When you understand the mission and you know what's at stake, you will move heaven and earth to get it done. And that's what our organization is doing. That's what the staff is committed to doing. And I will tell you, I have the best staff in the whole wide world. And I'm not just saying that. They are committed to this work. They are committed beyond what is reasonably expected. And I appreciate that. We are developing partnerships, again, with groups who are already doing this work. We don't claim to know it all. We don't claim to be the best. We're not the only. There are many of us working together. We're just doing what we do and trying to work with people along the way. We are engaging in communities, getting to work, and we expect you to volunteer. Now, I'm a military child, so that you pretend like that hand is pointing right at you. This finger is pointing right at you. We want you to volunteer with us if you don't have any other volunteer obligations, okay? So how can you get and stay involved? Number one, visit our website. Definitely, there is a plethora of information on our website. So visit the website, look around, shop around. Our merch page launched or should launch or will launch very soon. So please check it out, buy some merch. You can, and merch, that's a term that I didn't know either. Merch is merchandise. So pins, shirts, all of those types of things. We would appreciate your support. Follow us on all social media channels. You can go to New NC Project, New NC Project, and then NNCP Foundation. You can make a donation on our C4, which is the one that can lean partisan 49% of the time and nonpartisan 51% of the time. Or you can make a C3 donation, which means that your full donation will be tax deductible. You can also sign up to volunteer. I've said that 50 million 11 times. We would love to have you volunteer with our organization. Spread the word to friendlies. We have enough trolls, okay? They like to pop up out of nowhere and bother us like crazy. So we have enough of those. Spread the word to friendlies only. Offer suggestions, tips, and strategies. We're open. We don't know everything. We want you to tell us what we should know. But, if you never tell us, don't complain about, they should really consider this or they should do that. Don't critique if you hadn't offered a suggestion. So please suggest. And if you know groups we should be working with, please let us know. So what can I do? This is the question I get all the time. I'm white and you all are targeting people of color. What should I do? I'm Black, I'm Latinx, I'm Native. What can I do? You can do the same thing everybody else can do. We're going to make this real easy, friends. We're going to knock doors in communities where you feel you resonate. If you feel you don't resonate in a community of color and that's just not your cup of tea, that's fine. We can find a place for you to knock that will still be helpful to the movement. Make calls with our voice over IP system. It's a confidential, it protects your line so that no one sees your phone line. Help send text messages. This is my favorite because it's like click, send, click, send, but it's on a computer. So you can literally do it while you're watching your favorite, binge watching on Netflix or whatever you do. You can raise funds, help us by spreading the word, raising money with your friends. You can plan events, help us staff events, or just create something that you feel like you can do. We are open, but please make sure you do something. Choose what you're going to do. And if you don't choose what you're going to do, then please don't complain about what's not being done, okay? Now, I have created this particular slide because there are some friends who have the ability to make donations at a rate that, I can't determine or comprehend sometimes. But what I will tell you is by your consideration of making a higher or more significant donation to either the C3 or the C4, we are able to do many, many things. We have averaged or costed the cost of what it costs to register a voter with human capital, resource management, and then following up with that newly registered voter to get them to the poll. We have created a number of about $33. With your investment of $25,000, we can register about voters, Lord, 757 voters, or pay for about half of a salary for a regional organizer. Actually, it's a little under half because we pay a living wage here. But that is what you can do with a contribution of about $25,000. $10,000 roughly register 303 voters, or you can help pay for the 8-week college campus outreach program we've launched at UNC Chapel Hill. Go Heels. Everything's blue in the hill. You can, or on North Carolina Central's campus and Duke University's campus. You can be a mobilizer and pay or contribute $5,000, which helps us register about 151 voters, or it pays for half roughly of that 8-week college campus outreach program. And you see so forth, 2,500, 1,500 gets you 75, 30, and 15 voters. And to be clear, we don't pay voters. Okay, this is paying our staff for the, and having the infrastructure in place to actually register voters. So this is a way you can make an investment. Now, if you are a person who says, I want to make a much more significant contribution, or I have access to people who can make a much more significant contribution, then we have other options as well. For $1.65 million, this allows us to work aggressively toward reaching our goal of 50,000 newly registered voters this year. 208,000 gives us the opportunity to pilot 4 community-based constituency centers in 4 key areas in North Carolina from March of 2022 through December of this year. And those constituency centers allow people in some of the roughest and poorest areas to be able to come and have a centralized place to voice their concerns, have their needs met, and it serve as a resource center for many other community outreach groups that need a place to also stay and be in physical presence with the community. So that's what a constituency-based center is. For $1.44 million, this will help our HBCU College Campus Engagement Initiative across the 10 historically Black colleges and universities in North Carolina, which will help us to engage about 57,000 voters in North Carolina on those campuses. And then 250,000 allows us to launch our NNCP Foundation Fellows Program, which is 40,000 per fellow, but that allows us to train staff of color to work alongside of the executive level leadership in New North Carolina Project and New North Carolina Project Foundation. So they are able to go on and work in some higher level staffing roles on congressional or Senate level, or even local state ledge races, or not races, but offices. And that is something we see as a huge issue in terms of having a pipeline of talent of color to work on some of these higher level campaigns or in those offices. So once again, you can find us on social media at New NC Project, NNCP Foundation on all of them. We did launch our TikTok last week, so please go watch the first and only TikTok video we have, okay? It's the Drop It Challenge. All right, questions. I would love to entertain and answer all of your questions. And yeah, thank you so much.
So this is the voice of Vicki Shea coming in. I'm the co-chair of the club, and I'm going to be monitoring the questions. And one person early on wrote in, effectively, do you really mean it that there are 1 million voters of color that didn't vote, that could vote in North Carolina itself?
Yes, North Carolina has about 11 million people, and there are about 7 million plus or minus registered. Maybe 6 million or so are active. So not everyone, or actually it might be 7 million actively registered and another million who are inactive. But there are about 600,000 to 700,000 voters of color who were registered in 2020, but did not vote. And then there are an estimated 400,000 who were eligible to register, but did not vote. And so those people of color come from those 4 groups. They're not just Black people. They're Black, Latinx, Native, and Asian American Pacific Islander. So the 600 that were registered did not show up from all 4 groups, roughly. And then 400,000 estimated through the American Community Survey, they were eligible to register, but they just didn't register or vote, obviously. So yes, it's roughly 1 million. We actually estimated to be 1.2 million, but we just say 1 million.
Okay, and I'm getting questions here. Let me remind people to type your questions into the chat. The next one is, how can county Democratic parties work best with the new North Carolina Project?
In a legally compliant way. My attorney would be proud. Okay, we are working on the logistics of what that would look like. We do have to comply with certain legal, criteria before we say this is how we're working. We haven't spelled that out all the way. That's why we hadn't launched anything across, but I have all the contacts for all of the county party chairs and officers, but we are not able to release, exactly what that would look like because we want to make sure we're legally compliant. As I mentioned, we have trolls, we have people who may watch this, but people who are seeking to harm. That's their only job in life, is seeking to harm. So I want to be very careful in what I say to make sure I get that approved by my attorney. And we're in the process of releasing something. It's not finished yet. So coming soon.
Okay, so I have a question, and I have 2 people who've raised their hands, and it would be a lot easier if you could type your question into the chat. So I'll give you a minute to do that. And if not, I'm going to count on Chris to let them speak. Okay. Oh, all right. One of them already came. But first, to what extent have you been able to work with Stacey Abrams' organization for ideas, et cetera?
So first of all, Stacey Abrams is amazing and her team is phenomenal. Their organization does not sponsor the New North Carolina Project. This is not an extension of their organization at all. So I just have to be very clear and respectful to them. I did ask if we can name this organization New North Carolina Project, and they said yes. So that's progress, right? But the one of the leaders in the New Georgia Project was also entrenched in North Carolina politics and was a professor at UNC Chapel Hill, ironically. And she has been very helpful with helping to really clarify my vision from the very beginning and really, guide just kind of how North Carolina politics can be, I won't say changed, I'll just say enhanced for the good and for the better. So that has been helpful, and that's been ongoing conversations and things. I also, from afar, I've watched, I've read, I've listened to podcasts like everyone else. I got soaked up in, what's working, what happened in Georgia, how can we duplicate this effort? Listening to Stacy, going on lives and listening to her talk about the work. All of those are factors that played a role in how I set up the New North Carolina Project from the beginning.
So what is slowly explain, please, what is the difference between a C3 and a C4?
Okay, slowly. This is what I think one of my 5 kids would do. Okay, what the C4 is a partially partisan leaning organization. So we can message in a partisan way and do partisan leaning activities 49% of the time. So if we had 52 weeks in a year, 49% of those weeks, we could do straight partisan activity every day of the week for those 49% of the year. And then 51% of the year, we'd have to do nonpartisan related activities. Now, on the C3 side, we can only do nonpartisan related activities. And sometimes people confuse voter registration as not being something you can do on the C4 side, but you have to do it on the C4 side and the C3 side so that you can have the correct ratio of nonpartisan activities. Now, when you do voter registration, or when we do it, we just ask people, do you want to register to vote? If they say, I'm a Republican, we say, okay, no problem. Here's your voter registration, and we register them. If we had said, oh, you're a Republican? Well, I'm not interested in registering you. Or you're a Democrat? I'm not interested in registering you. At that point, we're taking part in partisan voter registration, in which case, as long as it fell within that 49% of the time, we'd be compliant. But that is the difference between the two organizations. The main difference on a money side for the C3 and the C4 is that it is much more difficult to raise money for the C4 because tax or contributions to it are not tax deductible. Whereas if you donate to a C3, they are completely tax deductible. So hopefully that helps.
And the next question or comment is, just jumped. I'm pleased that you have outreach on college campuses. Are you finding that most young people of color are not voting because they are discouraged, or are they eager to vote and get involved?
It's a mixed bag, honestly. When you see, let's just visit the summer of protest, okay? The summer of 2020. The summer of protest really turned a lot of people off from just engaging in political involvement. When you don't trust the system, and I know for some people, it's hard to kind of frame this, but if you grow up not trusting a system, it's really difficult to gain trust in a system later on in life when you've seen it not work for you, your parents, your grandparents, your cousins, your uncles, your aunties, and really your friends for your entire life. What makes you want to say, I know this hadn't worked for anybody else I've ever witnessed, but I think I'm going to get involved. So yes, it's the apathy, it's the distrust, it's the lack of consistent and continuous investment in communities of color to really show the community that somebody cares. When people do care and they show up often, and they show up not asking for something, that is like the olive branch to starting to build trust. And that's what we have to do. It's a long game, y'all. I wish I could say, we're going to have such an impact in 2022, and it's just going to be amazing. I really want that. I absolutely do. And my team does. They don't want to, show up and not have good results in 2022. But what I can tell you is just like you're building a relationship with a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it is just not something that happens overnight and you can't rush it. Can you imagine rushing your relationship with your boyfriend and girlfriend? How does that work out for you? It's not good. And so we're not going to rush these relationships for the sake of having a number on an election day. We're going to be careful and we're going to be diligent and intentional and authentic. We're going to be authentic. We're not going in saying, this person's running for Senate. I need y'all to vote. Well, we are going to ask people to vote. Don't get it twisted. We do have a plan for that, but we are not going in being disingenuous.
Perfect segue to the next question. Do you have specific goals for the 2022 election, such as ensuring that progressives win X number of seats in the legislature or the US House or the Senate, especially given gerrymandering?
No, we do not have specific goals for the 2022 election around numbers of seats and things like that. No, we don't. There are groups who do, we do not. We have goals around how many doors we knock, how many texts we send, how many people we're able to turn out to vote, yes, but not around house seats and all of that. And I'll tell you why. Here's where we make a huge mistake in North Carolina. So I'm going on record. Y'all tell whoever you want to tell. I don't care. Where we make a huge mistake based on what I've seen and based on analysis, post-election analysis, we target certain races, right? And then all the money goes to those races. And then the candidates either stand up a field operation or they don't. And then we wait for the outcomes and put all of our eggs in those baskets. I was one of those baskets, so I'm not saying it's a terrible thing to do. I'm just saying that's what we do. What should also be done is going to the areas where they traditionally don't show up to vote, Black, white, anything. We just choose to focus on people of color, but going into those areas and invigorating those people so they can vote. That, which Stacey says, you can't out-organize the gerrymander, or can you? Can you activate enough people to vote even when the lines are drawn against them? Perfect example. In my race, I was expected to lose by 10,000 votes. I lost by 1,978 votes. It was an R11 district. And then all of a sudden it was polling within the margin of error. Y'all, that's not because, the fairy gods came down and just made the district better in 3 months. It's because we knocked doors. It's because we, had aggressive field operations on the ground. Every candidate can't do that. So when we focus on organizing and getting the field game established across the state, especially in communities of color where people don't go because they don't like to walk in rough terrain. They don't like to go to homes that don't look like you can go in and sit down on the couch and have a conversation because it looks like structurally the house is unsound. Or they don't go where there are large groups of Black men gathered because they're afraid. I go straight for those groups. Those groups are the groups that I feel I would be embraced by, honestly. And they're very safe for everybody. I'm not sure why people don't feel safe. They're actually very safe. But anyway, my point is that when going to these areas, we are going to see people who don't traditionally vote all of a sudden show up to vote. And that is going to change the outcome of those targeted races and the non-targeted races. I truly believe that. And if you don't believe that, I invite you to really analyze races that have won based on field operations, not how much money was, flooded into the campaign.
So you've answered this one already once, but it's my question, so I want you to take another stab at it, which is, what volunteer roles do you see for aging or retired white liberals and or shy people?
Oh, okay. So many. So we do have an aggressive postcarding effort. We need to send out about 4 million postcards. Get your writing fingers ready because you have to handwrite the postcards. So we have a commissioned artist work on the one side. So a young person of color's artwork on one side, and then you have to handwrite the other side, the message. So that's one. The second is to literally share our items and things on social media. And if you understand algorithms and how things work and how you get information out to the public, it really does matter that you like and share a post and you engage with that work. Like, that matters. So you can do that. You can also make phone calls. We have to make phone calls into communities that sometimes do not like hearing from people of color. And there are people of color communities. And we can give you the dynamics of that, but we do offer culturally relevant training when we train volunteers, because we want you to know what you're getting ready to get into when you work in predominantly communities of color. So there are those opportunities. You can also do the text messaging, and you can make a suggestion. But one of our volunteers, just not too far from me, decided to be our merch guy. So he had skills in merchandise stores, Shopify, those types of things. So he set up the entire online store. That's his contribution. And he manages it, runs it, ships, drop ships, all the merch. Like, that's his contribution, because that's what he could do. If you have a desire to work in graphic design, we need people to help with our posting, social media, updating we have a very, not complicated, it's just extensive source guide for all counties. So if you go to like what is that thing called? I can't remember the name of it, but when you click on it, it lets you see resources from every county to help you with food, with clothing, with shelter, with, just a lot of different community resources, but it's searchable by county. We need people to research those things. We also need people to help us write editorials or op-eds. We have 3 op-eds that we need to write almost immediately. One is on education, one is on climate change, and one is on something else. We need writers who can write and help us get those op-eds out to the newspapers and other people so we can have earned media. Now, we do have a media firm, and we have our share of earned media, but those op-eds require writing, research, and time. So those are just a few examples.
Great. This question says, the gubernatorial election in Virginia seemed to turn Republican based on backlash to critical race theory. As a teacher, how do you counter this here in North Carolina?
So that's a great question. That's actually one of the op-ed. That's the other op-ed. We're writing misinformation toward Black and brown voters. So we're highlighting all of the ways the opposition chooses to provide misinformation to people of color, to keep them from voting, actually. But how we handle CRT, so with facts, number one, and then sometimes we just don't even address it. And I'll tell you why. So with the facts, we say CRT is a construct of understanding race, but it's not taught explicitly in schools in K-12 education. So we say that. And I'm a curriculum specialist, that's my area of expertise. And I highlight the fact that this is really taught in graduate level studies and then also in law school. So that's a little bit of fact sharing. The other thing I think we need to get better at is really countering with some more kind of spicy communication. We don't have to be so nice all the time. And we are so very nice and so very Southern. And sometimes we just have to counter this type of foolishness with more foolishness. In a racy way that makes us still look professional and like we have sense, but also with the way to make a statement. And so often, we kind of cower and say, no, they're saying this. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to have a fight. No, it's time to fight. It's time to fight. Because this is the kind of misinformation that gets spread, that gets taught. And, it's really all this is playing out strategically in school boards across North Carolina. So a way to really combat this is teachers need to galvanize and mobilize, and teachers need to start speaking up like we did when we marched in Raleigh 2 years in a row, wearing all of our red for ed, and really showed the state that no, we actually can create a workday situation because we're all going to take off and go march in Raleigh. And that's exactly what happened. And you saw how quickly the policy changed on when you can take annual leave or personal leave or any kind of leave based on marching and protesting and things like that. So I would say, how do we counter it? We counter it with a little bit of protest, but we also counter it with facts and then with a little bit of spicy communication. But teachers are the group. I think teachers and preachers are the groups of people who are the most ostracized from the political process, because we are taught to be as politically ambivalent as possible, not to have a side. And when you are teaching and you just, you accept everybody, everybody's welcome. You don't have a side, and I never hired a teacher and said, are you a Democrat or a Republican? I never did. Like, we never have the conversation about politics. We don't even talk about politics. All we know is the school is closed twice a year, once on the primary election day and once on the general election day. That's the closest we get to politics. And what we have to do is really understand that as teachers, you can be political. There are things you can't do while you're in your job, but there are many other things you can do when you leave. And so if teachers start paying attention and going to school board meetings, even though you're tired after having been had a long day with your students and your staff, if you start organizing, everybody will pay attention.
So last call for questions, everybody. Type something because we got an incredible resource here. But meanwhile, let me just ask one minor question. What I've seen and heard, and it was in your slides, the term deep canvassing, which gets thrown around, but it's not really clear to me what it is. So could you explain what that term means?
Yes. So Chris, I'm going to have Bree capture your information. Chris, Chris, you're one of the hosts, but those are the op-ed needs, immediate needs. So deep canvassing means talking to people on the doors in a deeper way, a more meaningful way. So the conversation is not like the script is not, hey, I'm Amy Steele with the New North Carolina Project. I'm here to see if you're interested in voting, and I'm paraphrasing, but would you like to register to vote? Or I see that you're registered, but there are 3 other adults in your household. Are they registered? Well, I would like to register them. Okay, you don't want to register? Okay, thank you, bye. Or you want to register? Okay, fill this out. Okay, good. Got it, thanks. I'll go put these in the mail. Okay, thank you, bye. That's a quick standard canvas if you're doing VR. If you're doing other things, vote for this person. Do they have your vote? Can they count on your vote? Yeah, okay, thank you, bye. That's that quick canvassing. Deep canvassing is, hey. How are you? Let's chat. So what's important to you? What issues are kind of resonating for you? Of course, who you are and all the pleasantries, but when you really start to get into people's story and what makes them tick, what makes them feel a sense of hope or a sense of hopelessness, what is going on in that household? It's really like a 10 to 12 minute roughly opportunity for a canvasser or a volunteer to really learn what's happening in that person's life. So it's more care, more concern, more conversation.
And so this is just me, nobody else has asked this, but do you really think that retired white liberals knocking on doors in communities of people of color are going to be able to engage in 15-minute conversations?
So let me ask you a question. Have you ever been to a Native American community where there is visible racial tension between Blacks and Native Americans, and they prefer to only talk to white people?
Huh.
Have you ever encountered some Asian cultures who prefer to talk to white people? Have you ever encountered Black cultures who prefer to only talk?
No.
I have.
Okay. All right.
So what I can tell you is to trust the process. If you volunteer to knock and we send you to a community, it's because we feel that you will have an impact there. And we always send people out 2 by 2. We have COVID protocols. We have like strict guidelines on what we do when people go out. But what I can tell you is that maybe what you may think of in terms of being the least impactful in communities of color can actually help and support. Now, don't get it twisted. We absolutely need volunteers of color to help get this word out and be the trusted messenger that we're trying to reach out to in communities. That is a fact. However, we also need white women and men who are older, who are liberal, to also help do this work, because you have to trust where we're sending you. And sometimes we need to send you to places where certain populations of people resonate with white voters. Even in the Latinx community. I mean, it's in every one of the people of color or communities of color communities, but those are the ones that come to mind initially, especially in Native American communities.
Another question, aside from critical race theory, the other claim by the right is that the 1619 Project is being taught in schools. Probably not, but is there a good response to this charge?
Yeah, I'm going to start responding to charges like that with this type of response. Prove it. Like, this is how bold we have to get, y'all. They are trying to occupy our minds, our hearts, our bodies, and our souls with things that are not real. They're not tangible, or even if it is real, what's so bad about the 1619 Project? Have you read it? If you read it and you understand it, it's actually not terrible. Yeah, it talks about some terrible things, but they happened. They're true. They're our first, if any history teachers out there, I need you to identify yourself right now. There are authentic, resourced documents and recordings and information held in all sorts of resources, but particularly the Library of Congress, because I was a congressional scholar, and we had to study some of those resources and some of those firsthand accounts of slaves who were recorded talking about some of the things they went through. And some of the documents of manifests on ships that were utilized by white ship owners. And that was their miniature business or their small business. It was a way for them to build their business empire by transporting slaves across the Atlantic or transatlantic slave in the transatlantic slave trade to really build their empires. So it's not like this stuff didn't happen. So we've got to start being creative with the responses that we have to CRT in 1619. Well, what's so bad about it? Oh, you think it disproportionately makes a white person feel terrible about the history of what this country was built on? Okay, well, tell me more about that. Like, we've got to get creative because we're letting them win on the commentary about how we interact with CRT in 1619 and other works, similar to that. Ebony and Ivy, that's a great one to read. We're letting them win, and we should not. We need to take a more defensive, not defensive. We need to take a more postured approach toward these things, and not feel so defeated by them.
Some other questions have come in. So to volunteer to do postcards or help write, meaning write op-eds, I think, we should go to the website.
Yes, go to the website. You can sign up to volunteer, and then I think there's a box. It's either a check box or it's an open box where you can write postcarding. But I think postcarding is now like an actual selection.
Okay. And let's see, what about areas where the predominant language is Spanish?
Okay, Phil, I encourage you to learn Spanish. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's possible.
Not a bad idea to learn conversational Spanish. But one of the things I'd love for people to consider doing is actually to learn Spanish. I've spent, most of my life speaking Spanish because I was raised by Black women and Mexican women. And I really, just picked up the language and it became my profession. When we show authentic interest in another culture, it really does go a long way. So perhaps a nice event for let me say it right, Featherington. Farrington. Sorry, Farrington. To have is to bring in a Latino or Latinx organizer to teach some target phrases that can be used just to establish a base level introductory communication with a person who speaks Spanish. The other thing is find a friend who speaks Spanish and take them with you. Learn, listen, let them do the primary talking. You hold the stuff. There's always stuff. When you go canvassing, you got stuff. You got your chapstick, you got your water, you got your mint. In this case, it's a chocolate. This is my reward for being, or my reward after this call. Like, you have your stuff, right? You're canvassing. I love to teach or do a talk on like canvas like a champion, because, you got to have like your canvassing life together when you go canvassing. But find a friend who speaks Spanish and take them with you. And then you carry the stuff while you're learning.
Great. All right. So here comes the final comment. I'm really impressed with this work and presentation. That's from somebody else, but also from me. I think this has just been fantastic. And there's a lot of interest, I think, from within Farrington and all the other places that are going to be seeing this recording. And I think there's so many different ways that people can get involved, and that's really helpful. So we will put all of this information that's from the chat and the links that have been provided. We will put all of that in some form or another on our website, and also in the email that will go out to our club members in the next few weeks. But I know that the website is very accessible. So anybody who wants to do anything or suggest anything or give anything, especially in the way of money, I know would be very welcome. So thank you so much for your time, and you've certainly earned your little piece of candy.
Thank you. I work out a lot. This is like a gallon of ice cream to me right now. So thank you so much. And I do want to say thank you to the audience. Thank you, Marva, and all the others. To the question about Movement Voter Project, yes, we work with Movement Voter Project. As Bree said in the chat, they are one of our predominant funders, and we're very fortunate for that partnership. But listen, y'all, I'm gonna just kind of give it to you as real as I can. This is not the most important election of all time, okay, for now. This year, this is our only election. This is it. People are like, when we go to doors and we talk to people and we hear the responses in the community, people are hopeless. They are apathetic. They are losing ground that probably has been gained for many years and, been building up steadily. But with all of that being said, they see a glimmer of hope by just doing basic things, meeting their basic needs, caring for the community. We're coming out of a 2-year pandemic where people couldn't touch. Like just going out and talking to people and laying eyes on people and touching them in their houses, and that matters. So please don't have this fantasy of how you will re-engage in political work being similar to what it was before. This is a different game. Right now, we're just reaching back out to people to say, we care about you. We're here for you. How can we help you? It's human to human contact and genuine, authentic care for people. Recognize the humanity of people, regardless of their skin color. We all have a heart. We all have a brain. We all have a nose. We have eyes. We're all the same. We just have this little teeny tiny bit of pigmentation that, yes, you should absolutely recognize. Don't ever say, I don't see color, ever. That is the worst thing you could say. You do see color. We all see color. Who are we kidding? But it also, when you say, I don't see color, it diminishes my difference. It diminishes my uniqueness. So don't say you don't see color. We do see color. We honor it, we recognize it. And now, how can we build together? How can we enjoy our lives together? We all want our kids to eat and be healthy. We all want our kids to thrive in this world, and we want to thrive. So how can we help each other do that? But this is the season for helping people. It is not the season for selfish acts of, whatever you do. It is the season for helping people. That's how we're going to turn this electorate around. So thank you for your time. I'm honored to have been with you all this evening.
Thank you very much. Everybody have a good evening.